The maitre d' barely glanced at me before shaking his head. "I'm sorry, madam, but there's no reservation under your name." I blinked, momentarily thrown off. "That's impossible. I was invited to dinner with my husband's family. They should already be here." He gave me a polite but firm smile. "I just checked. There's a reservation for 6 under Morgan Sinclair, but I'm afraid—" A sharp, familiar voice cut through the conversation. "Oh, Claire," Morgan's voice rang out, dripping with amusement. "Did you really think I'd include you in tonight's dinner?" I turned to see my mother-in-law standing just a few feet away, dressed in her usual designer ensemble, her platinum blonde hair perfectly styled. Seated behind her, my husband Adam sat stiffly, his gaze darting between us, clearly uncomfortable but saying nothing. Beside him, his sisters Charlotte and Emma whispered to each other, smirking. I felt my stomach twist, but I refused to let it show. "I don't understand," I said, keeping my voice calm. Morgan's smile widened. "Oh, sweetheart, I didn't think you'd actually come." She chuckled as though I had done something adorably naive. "This is a family dinner. A place like this is, well, a bit out of your league, don't you think? Maybe a budget restaurant suits you better." Charlotte snickered behind her wine glass. Emma avoided my gaze. Adam, he just sat there, gripping his fork, silent. I felt the weight of humiliation settle in. The judgment in the air was thick enough to choke on. Other guests were beginning to notice, their curious glances flicking toward our table. I should have felt small, but instead, something inside me clicked. I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile, and turned to the maitre d'. "Would you be so kind as to ask the owner to come out?" I asked, my voice smooth and confident. Morgan let out a laugh. "Oh, please. Do you really think the owner of this place is going to come out here just because you asked?" I met her gaze evenly. "Yes, because the owner of this restaurant knows me very well." Her smirk didn't waver, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. The maitre d' hesitated, clearly unsure, when a deep voice broke the tension. "Claire." I turned just as Daniel Leon, the owner of this exclusive establishment, stepped into view. A man in his early 50s, he was the definition of refined elegance, salt and pepper hair, a tailored suit, and the confidence that came with owning one of the most sought-after restaurants in the city. Morgan's eyes widened slightly as she registered the way he looked at me, not with dismissal, but with genuine warmth. "Daniel," I greeted, smiling. "It's been a while." His gaze flicked to Morgan, then Adam and his sisters before settling back on me. "It has. What brings you here tonight?" I gestured toward the table. Apparently, I wasn't included in the reservation. A bit of an oversight, wouldn't you say? His eyes darkened slightly, catching the unspoken subtext. Then, just as quickly, a polite smile curved his lips. "That won't do at all." Morgan scoffed, crossing her arms. "Oh, please. Do you really think this restaurant can just find a seat for her? This is a private dining establishment." Daniel remained unreadable. "You're absolutely right, Mrs. Sinclair. This restaurant doesn't accept last-minute walk-ins." I felt a pang of disappointment, until he turned toward the maitre d'. "But Claire is not a walk-in. She's family." The entire table froze. Charlotte nearly dropped her glass. Emma's eyes darted between me and Daniel. Adam, his grip tightened on his silverware. Morgan, however, wasn't done. "Family?" she said, incredulous. "You must be mistaken. Claire is my son's wife. She has no connections to—" "Actually," I interrupted smoothly, "Daniel and I go way back." Morgan narrowed her eyes. "How?" "Before I married Adam, I worked in fine dining. Daniel was my mentor." A stunned silence fell over the table. "She isn't just a former employee," Daniel added. Claire trained under me straight out of culinary school. I personally taught her everything about hospitality and high-end service. She was one of the best students I ever had. Morgan's jaw clenched. I turned to the maitre d'. I assume Daniel's word is enough to find me a seat? Of course, Miss Claire, he said quickly. Right away. Morgan's face turned a shade of red I had never seen before. This is ridiculous, she hissed under her breath. What's ridiculous, I whispered back, is that you thought you could humiliate me and get away with it. You're being dramatic. I shrugged. I'm just enjoying dinner with my family. Isn't that what you wanted? Daniel patted my shoulder. I'll have the chef send something special over. Something special? Morgan choked out. On the house, Daniel said with a polite smile. The waiter placed a freshly polished silver plate in front of me, followed by an elegant amuse-bouche, artfully arranged and entirely complimentary. This looks incredible, I murmured, savoring the bite. Silence settled over the table. Then Morgan spoke, forcing a tight smile. Well, I suppose it's only natural that someone like you would know people in, hospitality. Hospitality? I echoed, arching a brow. You know, service industries, waiting tables, kitchen work. Not exactly the kind of careers we're accustomed to in this family. Ah, there it was. The real reason she had orchestrated this charade. I took a sip of wine before responding. You say that like it's a bad thing. She blinked, thrown for a second. I simply meant, she continued, it must have been quite an adjustment, marrying into a family like ours. Still, Adam said nothing, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about Morgan's cruelty. This was about Adam's silence, because this wasn't the first time. It happened at our wedding, when she forgot to invite my family to the rehearsal dinner. It happened at Christmas, when she gave me a cookbook titled Simple Recipes for the Clueless Wife. It happened last summer, when she made a snide remark about how lucky I was that Adam had taken a chance on me. And every time, Adam had let it slide. I set my wine glass down. Then, leaning forward slightly, I asked, Morgan, do you know the difference between you and me? She tilted her head, intrigued, despite herself. I worked for everything. I have. A sharp silence fell over the table. Excuse me, she said tightly. You heard me. Morgan's face hardened. Are you implying I haven't worked for what I have? I let the question hang. I didn't marry into wealth. I didn't inherit status. I built my career from the ground up. And yet, I gestured around the table. Here we are, eating the same food, treated with the same respect by the owner. Morgan's fingers curled around her napkin. Charlotte and Emma were no longer smirking. Adam looked like he wanted to vanish. For the first time since I met her, I saw something flicker across Morgan's face. Not anger, fear. She had spent years convincing herself I didn't belong, that I was a gold digger, that I was lesser. But now she saw the truth. I casually cut into my dish again. Oh, and Morgan, I added, smiling as I took another bite. You should be careful about who you look down on. She narrowed her eyes. Why's that? I swallowed, smiled. You never know who might end up above you. She kept smiling, lips curved into something saccharine, condescending. If you're so independent, so self-made, Morgan said, her voice like sugar over glass. Why is it my son is the one funding your lifestyle? I paused. Charlotte let out a quiet gasp. Emma shifted in her seat, uneasy. And Adam flinched. Morgan's smile sharpened. She could feel the table waiting, watching me, expecting me to shrink. I set my glass down, slow and deliberate. What do you mean by that? I asked, my voice calm, despite the tight, knot twisting in my chest. She leaned in, her tone dropping into a mocking whisper. Darling, my son is the reason you can afford that lovely little boutique job of yours, isn't he? You don't need to work. You just play pretend at having a career. How charming. Her head tilted. That smug smile bloomed again. You speak of self-sufficiency, but at the end of the day, you're still just someone he supports. And there it was, her final card. The humiliation, crafted to break me in front of everyone, designed to put me in my place. I let the words settle. Adam still refused to meet my eyes. His sisters held their breath, waiting for me to crumble. And then I laughed. Not a small, embarrassed chuckle, a full, genuine, liberating laugh. Morgan's smirk faltered. Is something funny? I placed my napkin on the table, still chuckling. I just realized how truly out of touch you are. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I turned to Adam, my voice steady. You think he supports me? I raised a brow. That's adorable. Charlotte choked. Emma's jaw dropped. Adam went pale. Morgan's smile vanished. What are you talking about? I exhaled, almost pitying her. You still see Adam as your little boy, the provider, the rescuer. I leaned forward. But that's not how this marriage works. Her spine stiffened. You want to know what's funny? I said, letting the words hang. Adam's business? Half of it was funded with my money. Silence. Morgan's world tilted on its axis. What? She whispered. No warmth in my smile now. He didn't have the capital to start. But I did. Her fingers twitched. That's not possible. Believe what you want. But without me, your son's empire wouldn't exist. Emma turned to Adam for confirmation. Charlotte stared like she'd been slapped. Adam said nothing, still frozen. I shook my head. You thought you could humiliate me by painting me as a dependent little housewife? That's laughable. Because the truth was simple. Adam needs me far more than I ever needed him. Morgan's face flushed a furious red. I sat back, arms crossed. You've spent years trying to make me feel like I don't belong. But I've been the one keeping this marriage and your precious family reputation afloat. Emma looked, faint. Charlotte, speechless. And Adam? Claire, he finally croaked. I raised a hand, cutting him off. No, Adam. Not now. Not after you sat there and said nothing while your mother tried to tear me down. Morgan looked at him then. Really looked. And for the first time, she didn't seem proud. She looked disappointed. That was the most satisfying part. I stood, smoothing my dress. I think I'm done here. You can't just... Morgan began. I turned to Daniel, the only one who'd stayed silent and observant. Lovely seeing you, Daniel. Thank you for the hospitality. He nodded, amused. Always a pleasure, Claire. Then to Adam. You coming? He hesitated, and I knew. Of course I knew. He had never chosen me before. He wasn't going to start now. Morgan smiled, triumphant. I smiled right back. Because what she didn't know was I had already made my choice too. And soon she would regret ever trying to put me in my place. Adam didn't follow me. I hadn't expected him to. Outside, the cool night air hit my skin, but I barely noticed. My mind was sharp, my path clear. I pulled out my phone and typed, me. We're moving forward. Initiate the process tomorrow. Attorney, understood. You'll have the first draft of the divorce settlement by noon. Divorce. The word didn't scare me. What scared me was how long I'd ignored the truth, that I had been alone in my marriage for a very long time. Not anymore. I reached home. Before Adam. Just enough time. I walked into the office, the one he used, and opened the safe. He'd never changed the code. Inside were the documents, bank records, portfolios, contracts, and there it was. the one that tied his most profitable venture directly to my initial investment. I took a photo, put it back exactly as I'd found it. No need to take it. Not when I already had everything I needed. Then to the bedroom. I packed. Not in anger, not in haste, just clarity. By the time Adam came home, I was sitting on the couch, suitcase beside me. He paused in the doorway. "Claire?" I tilted my head. "Took you long enough." His eyes went to the suitcase. "What are you doing?" I stood. "Leaving." His mouth opened. "Wait, we should talk." "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to, maybe we should me. Not anymore." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I was just trying to keep the peace." "Peace?" I laughed. "Your mother booked the table under a fake name just to leave me off the reservation. She insulted me and you let her." "It's complicated." "No, it's simple. You're weak." He flinched. "You let her control you. Control us. I was patient. But tonight, I finally saw you for what you are. Claire, let's just talk." "That's the problem. There's nothing left to talk about." I picked up my suitcase and moved to the door. "I'll fight you on this," he muttered. I turned slowly. "What? If you think you're walking away?" "With half," I smiled. "Adam, you should really read your contracts more carefully." His face twisted. "What are you talking about?" "You used my money to build your firm. And guess what? I never signed over ownership." I stepped closer. "You assumed. You always did." He looked shaken. "You can't take this from me." "I'm not taking anything. I already own it." He staggered back, gripping the counter. "I'll be at the penthouse," I added. His brows furrowed. "What penthouse?" I gave him a knowing look. "The one you think you own." His face blanched. "The downtown penthouse?" "Correct. It's in my name. My lawyer verified the title this morning." His voice cracked. "You wouldn't—" "I already did." I pulled an envelope from my bag and tossed it on the counter. He opened it, hands shaking. His eyes widened. "This says, you own 51% of my firm." I was the original investor. You just never bothered to check. He staggered again. "Why are you doing this?" he whispered. And for the first time in years, I felt free. "Because, Adam," I said softly, "I finally see my worth." And then I walked out, for the last time. A month later, I sat in the penthouse, champagne in hand. My attorney slid the divorce papers across the table. "It's official. You're free." I smiled. Finally. The legal battle had been swift, brutal. Adam had tried to fight, threaten, argue, plead, but when faced with the truth of the documents, he had no ground to stand on. Morgan had called me venomous, called me a gold digger. I'd simply said, "If you raised him better, this wouldn't have happened." Then I blocked her number. My phone buzzed. "Adam, can we talk?" I sipped my champagne and typed back, "Me." "About what?" A pause. Then, "Adam, I don't know what to do." I shook my head. For years, I'd waited for him to show up, to fight for me, to choose me. But now I saw him clearly, a man who had always hidden behind others. And the irony? He needed me more than ever. But I didn't need him at all. Me. That's not my problem anymore. Then I blocked his number too, because for the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. And that was the most powerful thing I had ever done.